Mandy Stavik was the youngest child in a family of 4 siblings. In 1975, when Mandy was only 7 years old, her eldest brother Brent was shot and killed. After that, Mandy's parents divorced, and she lived with her mother Mary, her brother John, and her sister Molly. Although they were not wealthy, the 3 of them shared a home filled with love. They lived in a small house in Acme, Washington, USA. Acme was a peaceful suburban area with very little crime. People there often went to bed without locking their doors, and some even left their car keys inside their vehicles without worry. Mandy was well known at school and beloved by everyone in the community. People's first impression of her was a beautiful young girl with wavy blonde hair and a radiant smile. But she wasn't just pretty. Mandy was also smart and active. She was the top student in her class at Mount Baker High School, as well as the captain of the cheerleading squad. Mandy played softball, ran track, and also had a boyfriend named Rick. By 1989, Mandy was 18 years old and a freshman at Central Washington University. It was the most beautiful time of her life, with a bright future full of promise ahead of her. But everything changed on November 24th, 1989. That Friday was the day after Thanksgiving. Mandy had returned home to spend the holiday with her mother and sister. Being an active girl, she went running every day. Usually, her mother Mary would ride a bike alongside her, but that day she stayed home because her daughter Molly was visiting. Around 2:30 p.m., Mandy left home with her German Shepherd Kira. She usually ran along a wide road called Strand Road, then down toward the Nooksack River before heading back. That day, David Craker, a delivery driver, saw Mandy and her dog running past his truck. She was heading toward her home. Mandy's brother, who was at a friend's house nearby, the Anderson family, also saw her running back. But Mandy never made it home. Mary began to worry when Mandy took longer than usual. Her fear grew when Kira returned home alone. She immediately contacted Mandy's boyfriend and friends, but no one knew where Mandy was. Mary then called the police. When news of Mandy's disappearance spread, the entire community of Acme volunteered to search for her. 3 days later, they discovered Mandy's body near the Nooksack River, about 5 kilometers from her home. She was found naked, wearing only her pink running shoes. The investigation revealed that Mandy had been sexually assaulted and drowned. Police believe the attacker must have used a vehicle to abduct her because she was known as a fast runner, nearly impossible to catch on foot. They also suspected the perpetrator kicked Kira into a ditch, threatened Mandy with a gun, and took her to a secluded spot near the river to assault her. After being assaulted, Mandy tried to escape. The scratches on her arms and legs seemed to come from raspberry bushes she had run through. But she could not get away. She was struck hard on the back of the head, knocking her unconscious. The killer then threw her into the river, leaving her to drown. The cause of death was ruled as drowning. The murder forever changed the Acme community. People began living in fear and suspicion, knowing that a cold-blooded killer could be walking right beside them. In 1989, DNA testing was still in its early stages, but police successfully collected semen samples from Mandy's body. However, no matches were found in the system. The first person police suspected was Mandy's boyfriend. But Rick fully cooperated with investigators and had a solid alibi. DNA results quickly ruled him out as a suspect. The investigators collected saliva samples from 30 men in the area, but none of them matched. A neighbor named Paul testified that he saw Mandy running and noticed a black pickup truck following her. However, he couldn't describe the driver's face or remember any details about the vehicle or license plate. Paul became one of the suspects and was asked to provide a DNA sample. But Paul's DNA results did not match. Another witness reported seeing a suspicious man lingering around the area where Mandy disappeared. Police even had a sketch made, but the investigation stalled and eventually went cold. In June 2013, 24 years after Mandy's murder, 2 women named Heather and Marilee took their children to a water park. They were with a group of mothers. Both had grown up in Acme and attended Mount Baker High School, the same school Mandy once went to. While the kids were playing in the pool, the mothers chatted. The conversation eventually turned to Mandy's murder. Heather and Marilee didn't know each other well, But when Mandy came up, Marilee suddenly said she knew who the killer was. Heather was shocked because she suspected the same person. When they each wrote down the name, they were stunned it was Tim Bass. Tim's family lived on the same street as Mandy's, and the two families knew each other. Tim was 2 years older than Mandy and went to the same school, yet he had never been questioned by police or asked to provide DNA. Both Heather and Marilee suspected Tim because of disturbing experiences with him. Heather recalled that when she was 15 and Tim was 20, they shared a car ride after a softball game. Tim began stroking her leg with a pen and said, "Your eyes are so beautiful," which made her extremely uncomfortable. Marilee knew Tim because he was a friend of her husband. One night, while her husband was away, Marilee was home alone with her young son when she heard a knock on the door. Tim stood at the door and asked if he could come in and use the phone to call his wife. Marilee felt a little strange but agreed. After dialing, Marilee heard a phone number does not exist sound. At that moment, she had a bad feeling. Tim went straight to the kitchen, approached Marilee, and whispered in her ear that he loved her and wanted to have sex with her. Marilee immediately became angry and asked Tim to leave, but he refused until she threatened to call the police. Then Tim left. When Mandy was killed, both women immediately thought of Tim, but they never told police, believing it was only personal suspicion. After their 2013 conversation, however, they finally decided to report him. Tim's house was just a few doors down from Mandy's. 6 weeks after her death, he married Gina and moved to a nearby town. By 2013, he was still married, had 3 children, and worked as a bread delivery driver. Police visited Tim's house. When asked about Mandy, he initially pretended not to know her, which was odd, because everyone in Acme knew her case. Later, he claimed he remembered, but insisted he never had any relationship with Mandy. When police requested a DNA sample, Tim flatly refused, saying he didn't trust law enforcement. Investigators then decided to secretly follow him, hoping he would discard an item with DNA. But after 2 months, they had no luck. At that moment, police received an unexpected call from Kim Wagner, Tim's co-worker. Kim, who grew up in Acme and remembered Mandy's case, offered to help. 3 months later, Kim saw Tim drinking Coca-Cola from a plastic cup and throwing it away. She secretly retrieved the cup and handed it to police. DNA testing showed the sample on the cup matched perfectly with the semen collected from Mandy's body in 1989. On December 12, 2017, after 28 long years, Tim Bass was finally arrested. When confronted with the DNA evidence, he quickly changed his story, claiming he and Mandy had a secret relationship and had consensual sex hours before her death. But investigators dismissed this as a blatant lie. First, Mandy had only been home for a few days, and according to her mother, she spent all her time with family and never went out to meet anyone. Secondly, there was absolutely no connection between Mandy and Tim. No one had ever seen them together, and there were no calls or text messages exchanged between the two. Thirdly, why did Tim initially act as if he didn't even remember who Mandy was, insisting he had no relationship with her, yet later claimed that they were secret lovers? Why would he need to lie? Investigators believed that Tim had often seen Mandy jogging past his house and developed a dark desire to assault the young, beautiful girl. Gina, Tim's wife, initially gave him an alibi, saying that Tim was with her on the day Mandy was murdered. However, Gina later confessed to the police that Tim had forced her to lie for him. Gina also revealed that after becoming a suspect, Tim even tried to persuade his mother, Sandra, to lie and claim that it was their late father who had raped and killed Mandy. But Sandra refused to agree to such a monstrous request from her son. Gina recalled that she married Tim when she was very young, and from the day of their wedding, her life became a living hell. Tim was controlling, chauvinistic, and showed deep contempt for women. He dictated what his wife should wear, where she could go, and who she could meet. Gina endured life with him only for the sake of their children. Tom, Tim's brother, also testified in court, revealing that Tim had begged him to lie by saying he too had slept with Mandy, but Tom refused. Tom explained that ever since Tim was dumped by his high school girlfriend, he had changed completely. He became bitter, misogynistic, and viewed women as inferior. Tim frequently berated Gina and forced her into silence in front of others. Kim Wetcher also recalled that Tim never once addressed her by name, only referring to her as woman. Tim was sentenced to 27 years in prison. The court could not hand down a life sentence because his crime was not proven to be premeditated. The case finally came to an end, bringing some comfort to Mandy's family knowing that justice had been served. Tim was punished for his crimes thanks to the collective efforts of many dedicated investigators who, even after 25 years, never gave up on seeking justice. A mother who never lost hope. A wife who courageously told the truth instead of protecting her husband. A brother who chose to do what was right rather than blindly defend family. A co-worker who helped gather crucial DNA evidence. And two strangers who trusted their instincts enough to report their suspicions to the police, providing the first leads in the case. In life, sometimes the smallest actions we take can have the greatest impact on those around us. A smile, a word of encouragement, a gentle touch, or an act of kindness given freely can brighten someone's entire day. Never think that you don't matter in this world. Each of us has the power to influence others in ways we may not even realize. So always nurture positive feelings. Be kind, make the right choices, and treat others the way you would want to be treated.